Hello? Okay, cool. Hey everyone, welcome to the panel on technology innovation in the media entertainment space. Glad you guys can make it. So I'm here to introduce the moderator for this talk, for this panel. His name is Joe Devin, and he is a tech entrepreneur and advisor. So please welcome Joe Devin.
Thank you. Now I'm going to introduce the panelists. First up is Rebecca Avery. She is the Director of Content Operations at Pluto TV. Sure. Next up is Michael Lujan, who's the Senior Director of Application Engineering for the NFL. Next up is Holly Choi. She's the Executive Director of IT for Fox. Then we have Audrey Delaney. She's the founder of Star Metrics. And then last but not least, we have Ryan Bell, who is the Digital Media Specialist at JPL NASA. Thank you all for joining me today. I'd like to start with having all of you just introduce yourself a little bit and tell us a bit about what you do. Rebecca.
Okay. Hi, I'm Rebecca Avery. I'm Director of Content Operations for Pluto TV. We are a linear and VOD library app. We're up to, I think we're about on 30 platforms now. So you can find us for free.
Hi, Michael Lujan. I'm in charge of everything consumer-facing at the NFL. We play football, so that's what we do.
I'm Holly Choi. I'm Executive Director of IT at 20th Century Fox. Right now, I am in charge of the intellectual property master for the company and all of its sort of other.
Hi, I'm Audrey Delaney. I'm the founder of Star Metrics, which is a new platform. It's a talent analytics platform which helps content creators understand all the data about various actors and other directors and other kinds of talent so that they can help make better tailored content for whatever their need is, whether it's by region or by genre or other factors.
I'm Ryan Bell. I work at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Thank you. And we work on all the content that we can, from AR, VR to just breaking news, and we try to make it as exciting, inspiring, and educational as possible.
Thank you all. So right after I sent the initial question list to all the panelists, I read hot off the presses that the Academy of Motion Pictures and Sciences partnered with the Linux Foundation to create the Academy Software Foundation, which I think is pretty exciting for all of us. And there's a common saying in this business that we're not in the business of technology, we're in the business of content. We can argue about that, but the reality is there are lots of shared initiatives where we could all benefit by pushing the technology forward, and I'm curious if any of you have some comments on what you would be excited to see the foundation start to work on.
I can go first on that one. Okay. So I actually was pretty excited to read that this morning. I first read it in your email. I had no idea. But we just had a very kind of long conversation, a bunch of us, where I am. So Pluto TV is a sort of Silicon Valley meets Hollywood kind of culture, and there's all of these little different kind of offshoots from that, where all of us are learning how to take our backgrounds and put them together to build something new. So this is sort of one of those places where the culture of that is starting to kind of take some sort of formation, which is very exciting, because there is a sort of group intelligentsia or a community that surrounds competitions like this.
I'm excited about it because I want to see what happens with smaller studios working together and seeing if they start to kind of silo some things. I don't feel like people are going to be like, oh, we're going to share our secret sauce, but giving tools to creators that helps them work together is kind of amazing. it feels a little utopian to me. Like this is, here you go, guys, work together, and that doesn't seem to be the Hollywood mantra a lot of times. So yeah, I hope that people figure out how to steal in the right way from people. Maybe that's my utopia, which is bad, but that's how I feel.
Well, you know, as vendors, it's definitely something we'd be excited about sharing, you know, certain code bases, but usually contracts don't allow for that. So it's great to see the industry at least coming together and saying we should do this in theory, so hopefully everybody will follow along with that. The next question is about how Netflix and Amazon have really changed the game in a lot of ways, and the whole thing about innovation is taking technology companies and getting them closer to the end user than a lot of these corporations really have. And they both use data science and the data on their customers to help inform what films and shows to produce, as well as figuring out discovery, how to show only what interests the end user. So in your companies, how do you feel that you can get closer to your customer data-wise, in a non-creepy way, and deliver a better product?
I can go first. Yeah, we use data a lot. So we've been gathering data for 5-6 years now and really capturing what the users are interested in. You see it a lot in what we're doing with the content we're creating, both across social, YouTube, and our original content. This year we're launching 3 new platforms for that stuff, really focusing on bringing in that next generation of fans, figuring out what they like, what they don't like. It's really, really important for us, and I think that you can really see it in the content that's being created.
I would add to that. I mean, obviously, my platform is really kind of responding very much to the fact that, you know, everything is being driven by Netflix and Amazon and this kind of new, you know, data approach to creating content. And, you know, furthermore, like the marketplace is becoming so fractured and it's expanding, you know, and becoming more and more global and complex. So although I'm not dealing with the end consumer, it's more for the creator to kind of figure out how to reach that consumer best and to really tailor their product. Because there are so many different platforms, and you know the scope of it is just growing exponentially. So it's really a response to that and trying to, you know, provide that data to really reach the customer better.
But does anybody have, like, can you imagine what the dashboards that Hulu and Netflix are looking at? Like these very personal things, that it just kind of amazes me, because all we get to look at are these external tools that just gives us like, wow, we should put out more content like this one. But really looking deep into these demographics that are subscription-based, it gives me like 98% you're gonna like this. With our YouTube channel, we're like, oh, okay, let's just hope that it doesn't play some alien type of thing after our stuff. We're just trying to get people to continue to watch actual NASA products, you know. So Netflix and Hulu have your ass, which is amazing, and like, wow, I want to see their back end. Sorry, that came off wrong, but you know what I mean. Like, I really want to see what's behind the scenes with Netflix and Hulu, because that's an amazing data set right there that we just don't have, except for maybe at NFL through some of your stuff.
We capture stuff beyond just the you know, the users interacting with it. We have from a user who is a season ticket holder, goes into the stands, buys stuff. We're able to tie that all in together. I mean, to your point, it's a little creepy, but it really helps us define really what people are looking for, and really helps tailor what that next generation of fans looking for. I mean, even if you look at, you know, we talk about Netflix and Hulu and even TV, the next generation isn't there. They're on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and Snapchat, and how do you target those audiences and build content that they're interested in? What works, what doesn't work, and I think that's really the next generation that we're really focused on. So.
I think it also it leads to kind of underserved markets being served, right? Because if you're actually able to use that data not for evil, right, and to really find pockets of groups that just aren't really being served by the content that's out there, I think it can be really largely beneficial.
With that, and I would say I think that's what we see happening is just the volume of really, tailored content out there, and that's the plus side for the consumer.
Which leads to the subscription model. It really does deliver a better experience to the end user because commercials, for the most part, suck. Most people don't like them. Although yesterday somebody told me that they really missed the commercials in the old days. I don't get it, but anyway. This is challenging the traditional ad-driven markets, and I'm wondering how important is advertising to the future of digital media, and how is it going to evolve?
I mean, at Pluto TV, we find it pretty important because we are entirely AVOD.
Paid.
We do like to get, I mean, we're passionate about what we do. We're there because we love it, not for the money. Also, we need to eat. So it's a way that we can deliver a free experience. It's a way that we can have this app so that people don't have to log on and give us, information that we may or may not be super creepy about. We don't have to broach out any of that, which is great. And I think the AVOD space is a really interesting one to work in right now. My background, this is my 5th startup, and my background is entirely SVOD.
Can you just define SVOD and AVOD for folks in the audience?
Yeah, so SVOD is subscription-based VOD, so like your Netflix, which doesn't have any advertisements in it, so it's your subscription-based, versus advertising video on demand. So we have a video on demand library, and then we have about 100 linear channels that all run entirely on advertising. So it's a sort of, we get to deliver this sort of free experience for our consumers. And also because traditional broadcast television, like cable packages, are starting to get cut way back, it's been leaving a lot of advertisers without anywhere in the digital space for them to live. Not that we need to feel a lot of sympathy for advertisers, but they do give us free entertainment. So it's sort of a new thing, and there's technology that still needs to be worked out. There's things on the business side that still need to be worked out, but I predict probably a higher presence of AVOD platforms in the future.
Yeah, I think we like commercials. Like, they're a big thing for the Super Bowl. But in general, I think that the market is moving away from it. I think you touched on it earlier that we're moving to being a content business as opposed to technology business. And I think if you look at our business, it's really around making those deals where we can publish that content and giving them exclusive rights to content all the way down to our live games. And I think that while advertising will continue to play a huge role in what we do, I think that we're leveraging more around licensing our content.
Anyone else? No? Yes, I'm going to ask an esports question. Folks of my generation find it a little bit funny that people watch other people play video games. It's very hard to understand, but it's got $1 billion in revenue this year, 400 million viewers, and people just want to watch athletes play video games, as they're being called. So from a technology perspective, there's one very cool aspect of it, which is that every bit of data, all the statistics are there. You know everything. Imagine in football if you didn't have to use people or all kind of tools to figure out all the stats. It was all there. How can this be turned into an opportunity? And are any of you familiar with that, with esports and the technology around it?
I can go. Yeah, I wish I was born 10 years earlier. Really good at Madden. So yeah, I think that we're doing stuff similar. So if you look at next gen stats, it's a big thing that we're working on. There's actually chips in every single player's shoulder pads, and then there's chips in the football, and so we can actually track in real time where the players are on the field. And we have the app that we just launched actually has these really cool reanimations of it looks like Techno Bowl, if anyone remembers what that looked like, of the plays. It's really fun, and I think it gives us the opportunity to what you talked about, real-time data. We're doing statistics on what's happening in real time. I think esports is amazing, and I think that's a unique opportunity. I think that it's going to continue to grow. I think that we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg there. I think that it is a different demographic that they're attacking, right? Like anyone can do esports. I can go home and play that same exact thing that they're doing. I'm not that great at football, pretty good at Madden. So I think that it gives you accessibility to feel like you could be the next person, whereas you don't get that from professional sports. I think it's a place that's going to continue to grow. I think that people are investing a lot of money. I think they just opened a esports arena in LA. And I think that's going to continue to be a big thing. So yeah.
Anybody else?
I feel like you're looking at me, but
I just enjoy when you speak, so.
esports and Twitch, to me, everything's different. Everything's kind of a platform that has potential for amplification. So Twitch, we use in some instances like it's a YouTube channel, but one of the things that I keep thinking of is we've used an influencer, and it was the first time that we used an influencer. NASA does these things called NASA Socials, so they get to go behind the scenes to launches or to these special events, and we'll have somebody that could be a beauty blogger or something like that. And people think, oh, why would you have a beauty blogger? Because we're not reaching that audience. So we try to find these audiences. And so we had this girl named, her name is Atomic Mari, and she's got millions of followers across multiple platforms, but she's known for being on Twitch. And the thing that I found myself doing months after having her is I still follow her on all these different platforms, and I don't know why. But she's so good on all these platforms. I think that's why I want to learn from her, because any creator that can go multi-platform is very special, and that's why she's good on Twitch, because she's also good on another platform. And being connected to that person gives me that audience, because we were at Comic-Con and I happened to see that she was there, and I DM'd her, and she got back to me like immediately, and I was like, this human, like I have 1,800 people that follow me on Instagram or something like that, like a little above normal, but nowhere near like godlike stature. So she got back to me, and then she ended up going to our booth and taking pictures and all that stuff. And I was like, it's about the relationship. But her relationship with me and then her relationship with multi-platform was really cool, because I've never watched her on Twitch. So I just think that I think that esports is amazing, but if you're not good at getting that flow of all your people from multiple platforms and understanding the multiple platforms, just like you're a social media manager for NFL or NASA, then you're not going to be successful.
What I really like about your story, too, is talk about getting closer to your customer. How much closer can you get? She's basically a brand, and here she's communicating with you directly. It's pretty cool.
I'm sitting here, probably somebody's gonna follow her. She's so, I kind of love her. And I saw her husband's, and I was like, oh, I met her husband once, and now I'm like, oh God, I'm fanboying. What is wrong with me?
That's hilarious. And we have an intern who, at one of my events, it came out that he's in the top 0.5 or 0.1% of Fortnite players, and then he was like a celebrity at the event. Everybody was like talking to him. It was pretty wild. Now coming back to kind of Netflix. So Disney's developing 3 Netflix competitors, and every studio is working on a direct-to-consumer OTT offering. As we were saying before, data science enables us to identify new niches and new profitable niches. And every time there's a leap in technology, what winds up happening is there are more and more channels. So how many channels do you think that digital media can sustain profitably? How much is this gonna get like wider?
I think it's yet to be seen, right? Like, I think as more of them emerge, some of them fall away, right? So I won't name any names, but somebody just laid off their whole staff, right? So, I mean, I don't think that there's room for all of them that come out, but I think it's in, like there is in any emerging technology, there are winners and there are losers, and sooner or later we'll find out who the winners are. I know that there are, I mean, we're in the middle of, being merged with Disney, and so I know one of the things that they really wanted in the merge was Hulu. And I think none of these streaming channels are really sort of addressing the reason for cord cutting, which is, I don't want to pay for stuff I don't watch, right? So I really think that the winner is going to be the one that comes up with the platform where I can, a la carte, pick the things that I care about, either by show or by channel. And like, I'm never going to watch the golf channel, but if I'm on cable, it comes up anyway, and it continuously comes up, and it doesn't matter how many times it comes up, I'm still never gonna watch it. So not even having it in my feed would be beneficial to someone like me who doesn't have or want cable, right? And streaming as the replacement for that is, I think they all need to get better at collaboration and merging those services so that I don't have to subscribe to things I don't want. And I think YouTube probably is positioned in a good way for that because it is a subscription-based feed, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that kind of touches on the fact that content is still king. And it's not just about being able to curate the content for your audience, it's also about having a clean, customizable platform. Because if you are somebody who likes, like on our dial where there's 100 channels, you might like something that's channel 200 and then you also like 600, but eventually you're not going to keep coming back to our platform when you have to scroll through hundreds of channels to get from one thing to another. So I know that there was a study that Verizon did a couple of years ago where people still go to streaming networks because of the content. The only thing that turns them off faster than poor quality or bad content is a platform that doesn't work for them. So however many companies come up with that combination for however many audiences there are, that's what the answer is ultimately going to be.
I'd like to propose people make smart platforms because I have kids, and if they watch something really stupid, then it ends up in my watch list. And I'm like, no, I am not watching True and the Magic Kingdom at 9 p.m. But these platforms, I think when we have Disney come out, each competitor brings the heat and defines its competitors. So watching Hulu versus Netflix has been interesting because Hulu started to get kind of a live feel to it in some of the ways, and that's super cool. And anytime somebody changes my platform, I complain. I'm like, oh, what are you doing? I get the old man growl. So I'm excited to see what Disney does, because Joe and I are on the Interactive Media Peer Group for the Television Academy, and so we're always talking to these people that create these apps, and it's kind of amazing to sit back and think about what really matters to us as the viewers and what makes that interactive. But for God's sakes, why in the world would it not know that I'm not going to watch True and the Magic Kingdom at 9 p.m.? I'm not knocking it, but like, it seems like it should do that, right?
Yeah, I think that's part of the issue, right, is that I think a lot of the companies are sort of trying to gear everything toward the millennial experience, right, where they think millennials are all about individualization and it's all about me and personalization. But television is a communal thing in the home, right? So you are watching it with your family. But there's also that personalization. And so the part that I think is missing is the family content versus the individual content. I was told by my friend at one of these services that I could just make a profile for family content and then shut up.
I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that.
I know. I said,
but at 8 p.m.,
why don't you do that for me?
Just know that I'm not going to watch Frozen
Right.
past 8 p.m. It's not going to come on. I'm going to watch something about murder, you know?
The shows with the swear words in them. Right.
The bad words, yeah. I want those.
Did take me, I think, a couple of years to get Hulu to stop showing me The View. I was like, anything but The View. So Magic Leap, it has come out. I I'm really fascinated by AR, MR, aspects of VR, and I can't stand how many panels I've personally been on, personally moderated, seen, where everybody asks, when is VR going to be there? When is AR going to be there? But at the same time, there are some folks on this panel that are kind of in a field where there might be some really good use cases for it. So if you want to comment on Magic Leap or just about AR, MR in general, MR is mixed reality for those who don't know, what excites you about mixed reality or augmented reality, and what will help bring it to a point where we'll all really use it?
So our rovers on Mars take pictures so it amazes me that when they're looking at a picture from Mars, you're looking at real pixels from another freaking planet taken by something that was launched from this planet. And we have a HoloLens experience that is basically you're able to walk on Mars. And the first time I did this in 2016 or 15, it absolutely blew my mind. And we started to think about the use case scenarios because scientists are able to get there and be there and look at a specific rock and talk about a specific rock and know how far away it is so they could make calculations. Because the rover, you're not just sitting there with a remote control and, mirror, 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 mirror. You are giving it directions for it to go, and then we're going to upload it. It's going to send it up. It's going to take however many minutes to get up there, and then it's going to do its thing. So it gives us better data so that we can make the right decisions, because in the end, we've got one of the rover that has gone, multiple years past its expected lifespan. And that's because we figured out tricks by putting it on slant so that it's aimed towards the sun. So by having this data and understanding the landscape of Mars, we've gotten your tax dollars, thank you by the way, to go so much further and get so much more science. So that's how we're using that, and I think that that's an amazing use case, and I want to see AR and VR continue to grow. But in the end, I don't think Magic Leap is something that I'm going to buy for $23.95. The field of view is higher than the HoloLens, but HoloLens 2 will come out and be better. And one of the main things that we really, really have to think about is what is Magic Leap connected to? Because Apple's going to come out with something, and it's going to be connected to whatever the App Store or podcast is it's going to be pretty amazing. Microsoft is already connected to multiple things. What's the app killer or killer app or whatever?
How about esports? Put like a few more rovers up there, and then just have these guys on Twitch, ride the rovers and.
I'm
compete.
a friggin' buyer, dude. I am there.
Yeah, I think that we've played around with AR and VR with the NFL. You can watch games in VR, which is just weird. I don't know if you've ever seen the experience. You get a lot of shots that you don't necessarily want. But yeah, I think in general, where Magic Leap I think isn't, where I don't think it has a competitive advantage is that Google's getting there, Facebook's getting there, Apple's there, Microsoft's there. They've been there for a while. They've been trying to figure things out, and Magic Leap is just jumping in. And I think that, to your point, I think really what their advantage is going to be is that it doesn't matter what the hardware is. It matters what the content is on there and who's building for it. And at the end of the day, no one's going to drop $2,300 to get Magic Leap glasses when their phone's going to give them the same exact experience. And I think that's why Apple and Google ditched glasses and are now just putting it in your phone. Apple's putting it in your phone because they know that no one's going to buy the hardware, and if they can just extend what you already have and build that experience, I think that's really what the users are looking for. What I think is going to be interesting more than anything is to see what happens with MR and AR. I think Pokemon Go is probably the example everyone uses for AR and what they were able to do with that, and that the buzz it created around that. But I think there's so many more opportunities to do with that. But at the end of the day, VR is interesting and to do like scientific things, to do engineering things, to do business things, but like to ask a user to completely shut off the world and put on glasses and jump into this experience, I think, kind of talks back to what we were talking about with content and these platforms in which, it's a communal experience and you're asking people to get rid of that communal experience and go into this unique, into their own individual world. I think it takes away from what the whole purpose of content is.
And looking at the way that Magic Leap is set up is kind of brilliant. And if you guys don't know this, Magic Leap's, the computer is on your hip instead of in the headset. So they're putting a supercomputer on your hip. You already have a supercomputer here. So if Apple comes out with a headset that just connects to your phone, they're doing something that's going to make it cheaper already because you've got something that's going to power it that's already connected to LTE. Ta-da, right?
Good point. Do you want to say something, Holly?
No, I was just agreeing that if you're not able to make a communal experience, people will turn off because eventually people want to be around other people.
Makes sense. Audrey, your company has been called the Moneyball of actors. How can the studios use your technology to better cast their films, to see better the actors? Like what exactly is it that you do?
Sure. Well, it's not just the studios, because obviously the idea of the platform too was to really make it available to the whole, huge scope of content creators, which is individuals, smaller companies, global. There's such an explosion in global content, so it's everyone who's making, content at big budget or small budget, and to really kind of hone in on what works for those ranges and for where their target distribution audience is. So. We use all the different factors that you'd want to make that decision, whether it's box office performance or social media power, award capacity, like some, award-winning kind of content, or, maybe strength in a particular region. There's a lot of interest in making, say, like a co-production with China and having the right talent to, support that region as well as maybe another region, or, something in Europe. So the complexity of all those different kinds of calculations is really what the idea was, to provide, a suite of tools that could let you make your own decisions around those things.
Cool. An interesting aspect about streaming is that it allows you to reach a global audience, which wasn't really so easy to do before. And other than the contracts and the rights, it's definitely an area for future growth. How would you use data science to market to those audiences?
Well, I would, to kind of follow on what I just said, that is really one of the thoughts of the platform I developed, is to think about how your content will relate to different audiences in different parts of the world. Because it is, especially for maybe some of the smaller budget productions, it's really going to a worldwide kind of direct-to-streaming platform. So it's something that people are really trying to take into consideration.
Doesn't look like any more comments. Just so you know, where I was hoping one of you would kind of go to is that there's what's it called? Not audio recognition, but basically where you're taking speech to text and then translating that into multiple languages. So I thought maybe some of you might be working on it, but I guess not. So
Actually, we are. Okay. I didn't know that's where you wanted to go, but yeah. So we're currently. That's a big project for us, because we talked about it a little bit backstage, but the 2020 season is the 100th season of the NFL, and one of the big things that we're really trying to focus on is bringing as much of that 100 years to as many users as possible. And that's the big thing of it, right? Like, not everyone speaks English, so how can we get that content into as many languages as possible? We're working with Google in order to translate all of our VODs into as many languages as possible. It's a huge project, and I think it's beyond just that content. It's then again, talking to both what you guys were talking about, is really getting content that's curated for these new markets, and that is because not only do we want to celebrate the last 100 years of the NFL, but then celebrate the next 100 years of the NFL, and it's going to have to grow beyond these borders. They're going to have to become a global sport, where you see us in Mexico, you see us in London. 2020, we're playing in somewhere in China. Can't remember. It was either Hong Kong or Shanghai. And so just that continued growth of the league is going to require us to translate into as many languages as possible.
Thanks. Artists are complaining that data science takes the art out of content production. How do you respond to artists who give you pushback on introducing technology, data technology, to the decision-making process?
I think they have it wrong. I feel like if you don't know what viral content is before you make it. Like, it's just the way to study what you've done that's been successful. So you make something successful. Like, I have a friend who redid Jurassic Park for Snapchat, and then it became completely viral. With like cardboard monsters and stuff. It was very silly. But if you don't look at it as a justification for your art, then you haven't created good enough art to be justified by it. Like nobody's going to look at your stuff unless if it's crap. You have to do like amazing stuff, and then you can show somebody. It's always like the guy that comes, with some startup idea that doesn't have any experience with getting burned before. You have to show that you've tried something before you can complain about not getting any metrics. I kind of feel a little like I don't want to hear folks whine. You can get some really amazing stuff happening if you understand how to create art on these platforms correctly, because these platforms are going to give you the metrics themselves.
Yeah, I think it's a balance, really, and I think it needs to be approached that way. And I've seen at multiple companies where I've been where there's sort of like the data people versus the creatives, or the business versus the creatives, but it really is a healthy mixture of all of those things. And I think if you can have an environment, a culture that sort of supports where the creatives understand that they can use the data, that at the end of the day, they realize they're creating their content or curating their content for a certain audience, and they can have this as an additional piece of support to give them direction, so there's less guesswork for them. It's ultimately a pretty great thing, but I haven't seen a lot of pushback in any environment where everybody sort of gets that.
And I would say that, of course, the data is at the forefront of my platform, but, the sort of goal of it is really to show how much talent is out there and to showcase new talent and, to show that that pool is enormous and it's changing rapidly. And, beyond the sort of big names that everybody knows about, there's an amazing, to your point, the opportunity for people to make a name for themselves is bigger than ever, because there are so many different, channels for that content that can be so tailored to certain audiences. So I think it's a benefit overall.
Yeah, we have to be able to collect the data. So if you come up with a good pitch and that pitch doesn't include a way to track it, then it's not a good pitch. It's just not. Like, we had this really successful thing happen. Oh gosh, and I'm trying to be very gentle with how it was very successful, and it got picked up by the news. But we had a hashtag that did not get picked up, and so we're trying to justify it, and we're gonna have to use other ways to justify how well this worked, because nobody used the friggin' hashtag, and that was my hashtag. So like, it's on me. I guess it should have been shorter or better, but like, you have to find a way, whether it's newspapers, whether it is the hashtag, whether it's how many you can justify via clicker, but that's part of the creative process. And if you don't do that as part of the creative process, then you're not going to be able to do the next pitch, because nobody's going to believe you from the last one.
And there is a sort of marriage of creativity and science in gathering data as well, which I think is something that we're still getting really good at as there's more and more data coming in. Like back 7 or 8 years ago when I was doing my first TVE deliveries, I think I was delivering 8 points of metadata for a movie. And the platform that I'm on now, I take 70-something points of metadata for a short video clip. So as all of this data becomes available, business intelligence now has a much more interesting but much bigger challenge to make sure that they're drawing the right conclusions at the right time and not premature on any of those.
Can you explain what content-related metadata is?
Yeah, so that's kind of my forte, is more just the content-related metadata as opposed to viewer metadata, and what happens with our audience and the behavior of the audience. So I'm content operations, which means anywhere at Pluto TV the content goes is where I go. And one of the main, most important parts of content that I bring in and push out is the metadata. And so there's actually 2 types of content metadata. So this is an MP4, this is what the bit rate is, the structural metadata that we use for transcoding and for the tech pieces. And then there's also like the more descriptive pieces, which ultimately are the pieces that like data scientists use within our company, which is what was this called, what was the runtime, what was the description, who was in it, and where you can start to find those like editorial patterns.
I'd like to ask you, Ryan, what are your goals for, or what is NASA JPL's goals for the digital media platform? Are you trying to push NASA TV? Is it more about being out every place that you can?
I mean, I hate to use a boilerplate answer, but it's making good content and making sure that that content's used correctly on the right platform. And that I'll follow this up with a story that makes a little bit of sense. We are an FFRDC, Federally Funded Research and Development Center, so we can't put paid ads for anything or anything like that. So recently, you're familiar with IGTV, which is Instagram's vertical video play recently. So we were on the beta testers, the first people to be able to put content on there. And first stuff that went out, millions and millions of views, millions and millions of awesome views, and we're like so stoked about those numbers. We were worried about the attrition. The attrition was pretty severe, but it went from millions to hundreds of thousands of solid views with long-term views. And so we wanted to do a test, and we wanted to see if we could put horizontal video on vertical video and see if people would push back, and I think the right term is bitch. But so we put this out there, and I was like, somebody's gonna say something. Not a single person said, hey, NASA, you did this wrong. Not a single person. Everybody turned their phone this way and watched it, and we got better numbers. And I just thought that was amazing. So we're willing to try new things, even though we had it in vertical and we had it in horizontal. But we want to test these platforms, and we move where the algorithms move us. We try to be agnostic about the platforms that we might love. Like if Facebook is making it so that you don't get any views because you have to pay, which is what they're doing, and it's, it kind of crushes our numbers there, then we're gonna put our focus somewhere else. Even after we talk to Facebook and say, hey, yo, what are you doing? You're crushing our numbers, brah, because that's how we talk at NASA, apparently. So it's those decisions on a daily basis. And we're also very reactive because we're a news organization. Everything that comes to us, no matter what facility, it's something that's very immediate. It could be information from Voyager or from Curiosity at any given moment. We don't know. We don't know sometimes a week in advance or an hour in advance. And so that frustrates me because it's hard to form a long-term story for something. And like my boss, Stephanie, she runs the Mars Curiosity account on Twitter that has like more followers than at NASA JPL. And she has a voice for Curiosity. And one cool thing about like any spacecraft, any spacecraft, any rover, we speak of them in nautical terms. So they're all females. So they all. So I'm like yes, girl power. You know, like, and I think that's just so rad. But knowing that she has a voice and understanding her voice, it makes people feel more connected to that mission, and that's what I want for every mission. And I want to get other people as excited as we are about these missions. And we're still trying to find a voice for NASA InSight, which is a lander. And a lander's not sexy like a rover. A rover's going scooting around. A lander's just landing. And I'm sitting here like how do I make this thing sexy? And I like, that's my internal problem at work. Sad, right? Like, I'm gonna make this lander. All right, I need to just put the mic down. Sorry.
I wouldn't mind having that problem. That sounds pretty cool.
Make my lander sexy. Like, I need Exhibit to come by. Oh my God, I'm old as hell.
All right, one last question before we go to the audience. And it's not about GDPR, you'll be happy to know. What is ahead for you and or your company?
I mean, I think I've said it a couple times. So yeah, we're 100th anniversary is coming up, so that's huge for us. I think that's a big data problem for us. I think that, you know, it's getting all of it's not just video content or articles. It's all of the stats for all the players. It's all of the I think there's like 35,000 players who've gone through the league throughout the course of the 100 years. Getting all of them in there, creating contextual articles and video content around that, creating it so that the plan being that, like, if I watch a running play from a rookie, I can show you the top 10 rookies who had a similar running play, and then but then extending beyond the platforms that we're on today, right? Getting into places like voice and automated chats and things like that, where we're using machine learning so we can take this huge data set and create contextual conversations with users so that, again, it's about getting that next fan base, right? Like, it's, you know, have arguments with Alexa about who the greatest quarterback ever was. It's not Tom Brady. And then, you know, and then creating that, so that you have a relationship with this device that has the knowledge base and the understanding of not only football but of you, so that they know that, like, oh, because you're a Patriots fan, you're gonna say Tom Brady, so I'm gonna say Joe Montana just to be because we like messing with our users, you know, and things like that. So, like, even down to where you're located. So let's say that you're in Pittsburgh. We'll say, hey, do you want to see Baltimore scores? Just because we know that you hate Baltimore, so you're going to be that much more aggressive in telling us, no, I don't want anything from Baltimore. Give me my favorite team. So just using a lot of data to just really figure out what the users want and build those next experiences, be it chat, AR, VR, those type of things.
Very cool.
Well, my company is going to merge with another company, so there's going to be a lot of focus on that for them. But for me, really, I deal in metadata and intellectual property metadata. And so when you have 100 years worth of that data, some of it's very clean and some of it is just garbage. And so I think data quality and cleansing and analytics are going to be top of mind for me, as in my role anyway. So.
Well, we're obviously, you know, a very new platform, so we have a lot of things planned for the next couple iterations in the next few months. So right now we're all focused on actors, but, you know, we're very soon we'll be having directors, writers, metrics on the site, and then likely next step will be to add kind of other kinds of entertainers, so potentially influencers and musicians, and, you know, expand the sort of pool of talent that we're looking at.
I have no idea. No, we've
Aliens.
got what?
Aliens.
Yeah, aliens. For us, it's always about inspiring and finding ways to educate. Right now, we've been nominated for a Television Academy Award, so we're really excited about that. And that example of, are you guys familiar with Cassini's farewell to Saturn in September? I see a few nodding heads. So doing something like that where it is educational and inspiring, and we're reaching out to television and film a lot more lately, and we have an artist studio on Lab that creates experiences that we have at festivals and at music festivals. So I want to collect more like humans that are in love with us, you know? Like, we make robots, but we want to have humans feel more connected to them, because it's really cool the more you get nerdy in that. I don't know, I'm really bad at panels apparently, but like, that's really what's important for us, because a view, a metric, it doesn't mean as much as somebody that actively goes out and wears a NASA shirt and tells somebody the story that they learned. We want that metric to be like kind of something that you've learned, that you take and you've like, I've got this nugget of cool stuff and I'm in love with this project and I want to be an engineer because of it. You know, like that's what really drives me. It doesn't drive me when we make a tweet that gets 10,000 retweets. It drives me when I see a 10-year-old come up to one of our astronauts and like say, how can I do it? And then somebody says, this is how you can do it. That's the metric, because like the 6,500 employees that I work with at JPL, they're all that metric. They all have this one story that was like this is why I work here. And I don't know, I'm gonna start crying, so I'm gonna shut up.
My next stuff is a little less emotional, but you'll relate because I need to sanitize a lot of metadata. And it's an enterprise level platform. It is Break.com and it's Paramount Studios, and it's what are all the data points that you can find in common with those? What is the best data that can go out to our channel editor team, original productions, marketing, BEI, communications team, and how do I come up with clean points of origin for everything coming in moving forward? And then once I've figured that out, how about all the tens of thousands of titles that are already sitting on the platform and the backfill of those? So it's becoming less about this person had a specific request for me, because I'm realizing that as this business matures, those specific requests are just going to keep coming faster and faster. But how do I sort of operationalize when a request comes in, and how do those two completely different workflows of future and backfill come together? So all of this is just really me implying we are hiring for data scientists at Pluto TV.
Well said. All right, we have a few minutes for audience questions. I believe I see a microphone there, so I assume you guys have a setup to come on up and.
Hi there. I've really enjoyed the conversation and discussion. I'm so curious, all your different organizations, how are you using data to understand who your audience is, who are your most valuable segments of your audience, how to target them? And then are you seeing any really interesting insights about your audience that have surprised you that you just didn't expect?
I can touch that one. Yeah, so it's actually pretty interesting. So we've realized that 75% of all of our consumptions happens on Sunday while the game is happening. And we only have 16 weeks of that, so it's pretty intense where we have to get those eyes on our content. Beyond that, 9% of our users consume 90% of our content, or take up 90% of our content consumption. That's insane. Like those super fans are like on our apps and our websites and everything else for on average 6 to 12 hours per week, which is I have better things to do with my time, but like it's fascinating that those exist, and then how do we get, and that's a great story, and that's amazing that those people exist, and I don't think there's anything we can do to make them go away, but how do we get that other 89% to come over, right? And that's the really interesting part for us, is like, how do we bleed over into that area and get them on board? And you know, like I think it's pretty well known that our average fan is maturing and is getting out of that target base that our advertisers are interested in. And so how do we get those people who are younger and aren't necessarily in that 9%, how do we move them over so that we continue to grow the business?
In a similar vein, and I'll make this super quick, 75% of our demographic is male. Don't like that as much. You know, I'd want it to be a little bit more. So we use that information and we try to find ways and the right platforms to go to excite, you know, a different demographic, basically. So we're very aware of that, and we, of course, you know, we're trying to go to more festivals and cool stuff like that we can.
Cool. Please don't be shy. Come on up to the microphone. Otherwise, I'm going to have to ask the GDPR question. So.
Hello, everyone. My question is based on maybe a little bit like herd questions. So, but more toward more like technical side. When you're like trying to understand your audience, what kind of new method you're using, like machine learning or maybe natural language processing? Because like I was working for Fox for over 2 years back to Asia, and we were only run maybe like linear regressions, and I'm just curious, like what kind of new technology that you are using. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we're starting to get into that. I think that natural language processing is a huge part of what we're doing with the trying to create conversational APIs. I think that machine learning is turning into a huge part of what we're doing. I think, again, speaking to that demographic getting older, how do we target this younger demographic? We obviously are not going to figure that out by ourselves, and we want to use as many tools as possible. I think that's machine learning. I think it is the creating these contextual APIs beyond just conversations. It's how do we find content that these users would be interested in. I know that's rudimentary machine learning, but it's still machine learning. And I think that like this is just the tip of it for what we're doing. Just the fact that we're even recognizing the fact that we want to get into this space and that we're hiring data engineers as well. How do we, by bringing that on board and understanding that's something that we want to focus on, I don't know the answer today as to what the NFL is going to look like when we have data scientists, but I'm really excited because I think that they're going to bring a different look as to how we attack that problem.
I think also we're sort of getting into the machine learning aspect of content tagging as well, right? So just what you're saying, sort of having better themes and keywords attached to the content so that those who are using it for marketing purposes can pull together better compilations of things that are in the catalog that we've all but forgotten about, right? Part of what you'll find is that we have what we call the evergreen titles. These are things that get used over and over all the time because they're known and they're popular. But what if there's something that we made 10 years ago that now all of a sudden is very relevant because there's some theme happening with, with the new groups of people and different demographics are suddenly interested in cats, right? And so do we have everything tagged with cats? And so can that be easily found? And using machine learning to introspect content to pull out those themes is actually a big thing that we're engaged in right now.
Last question.
So you guys talked a lot about using internal data sets, like how the NFL players move or, how many people are watching your content. I'm with a data aggregation distribution company called SocialGist, so I'm curious, how important are external data sets for you guys, and or not important? You know, for example, what are people saying on Reddit, or what are people saying on, you know, VK or other platforms, and you know, how, if that's interesting, you know, how would you guys use that, or how difficult would that be to layer on top of your internal data sets?
It depends on which part of the business you're talking about, right? In some groups, that's very, very important. In other groups, it's sort of frowned upon, right? Because in some cases, we're actually we're supplying that data, and then the company is then trying to charge us back for data that we gave them. So that's a little bit, right? So people sort of get a little unhappy about that. But there are other sources of information that we don't necessarily, you know, participate in that are really valuable, and it just sort of depends on which kind of data we're talking about and who would find it useful.
As far as us for external data, we do pay a lot of attention to our audience. We are a startup. I mean, to the point that all of that actually comes in on a Slack channel. We actually will, yeah, we all have access to it. We read it. We say, here's this guy in Cedar Rapids who wants this thing. We, at least anecdotally, are always saying, here are some things that our audiences want that's pretty cool, that we're going to get ready to launch these channels, and it gives us marketing ideas. So we don't really fold it in a really hard way and say, you know, these are the external data points, this is what everybody's saying on Twitter, and so here's our product roadmap like compared to that. But we do definitely keep an eye on it to keep us aligned with our audience.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's huge for us. I think I have like 700 SDKs in my mobile app. That's maybe an exaggeration. But like, yeah, I think that across everything that we do, it's not only just you know, Comscore and Nielsen, things that we have to do just for contractual reasons, but then things like, yeah, the sentiment, right? Like, it's really trying to figure out, besides the obvious stuff about people not liking us, figuring out, you know, how we can find where people are actually feeling about the content, even down to the apps and things. That's really important to us. So.
We use multiple tools. So let's say we have something that's sensitive that's out there that we need to look at, and I'm not going to say those tools because I don't want to be seen as like advertising or anything like that. And you know, if it's very sensitive and we're nervous, then we're going to be on top of it with a team looking at those tools and at multiple platforms simultaneously, and that will come up at any time and can be really freaking scary. So it's something that we're listening to, and since it's so broad, we have no idea if it's going to end up on Reddit or Twitter or whatever. But I don't even like talking about those times because it can be bad with us, just because like, you don't know how bad it could get real quick, and how to cauterize that.
Thank you.
It has actually spawned an industry called social listening all around that dashboards, which I'm sure you know well.
Oh yeah. Huh? That's just not a good time. That's not a good like time in my day for me. It always happens really early in the morning, and I'm like, oh God, what am I looking for?
Yeah. Well, thank you very much to all the panelists, as well as to the audience for attending, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thanks.